Hello everyone and welcome to Design. My name is Hugh and today's video is part of the tips series. Get ready for an engaging session ahead that hopefully will bring you some cool information. Thank you and hope you'll enjoy the session. Hello everyone and welcome to another video, and this video is part of the tips series. So what we're going to have here is a conversation about ideation sketching. Now that being said, let's hop into it and see exactly what this is all about. Firstly, we have to understand what ideation sketching is. What that means is basically you have to understand that it has many applications. It can be used in many part of the processes. You can use it in concept art, design, illustration. It has multiplied applications across the board. In concept art, in the first phase, you do a lot of ideation before you commit to a design. In illustration, you do ideation on composition and subject matter to actually check and see which are the part of that process that actually can help you out. What is ideation? So first of all, is the creative process of generating and developing ideas. It involves brainstorming, thinking outside the box, and coming up with new innovative solutions to different problems. So we have to remember that. We got a couple of general ideation techniques. We're going to go into a technique type of aspect, which means we have to understand which part of the technical component is going to be addressed. We have the what if part, where what this means is the what if method is a simple ideation tool. It's mainly based on asking open-ended questions within a constrained amount of time, which this means we have a clear explanation here. The baseline idea is you start with a basic concept for the landscape, such as a planet in the solar system. It is great to remember it requires a baseline idea. The what if scenarios, what happens to these is, what if the environment was alien? Consider introducing alien elements. You have to consider thinking about unusual plants, floating rocks, peculiar creatures, and so on and so forth. These type of things that we're trying to include are there to make the landscape more fantastical, more interesting, and cooler, for example, for the people that are trying to understand what we're trying to do. You got sketching explorations. You can create quick sketches or doodles for each what-if scenario. This allows the artist to visualize and compare different possibilities. These are the type of things that you want to think about. A what-if scenario is something that's a tool, and again, it is used as a tool. When it comes to word banking techniques, this involves making a list of theme-related words like space, astronaut. You combine and remix this word to create new ideas. Then you sketch quick drawings based on them. For example, we have two banks of words here. You got space odyssey, space traveler, space bar, spaceship at light speed, space carrier, space destroyer, and so on. In the other bank, you got astronaut in distress, so it has to be a sort of an emotional catch. You have an astronaut oxygen tank, which is a prop. You have an astronaut hologram, which is a communication device. You have a plasma gun, which is a weapon. An astronaut lost in space, maybe like, purely a body, like it's floating. Astronaut against the sun, magnificent, like a landscape. You see the sun there, and you have the little astronaut being overwhelmed by this big sun. These are the type of things you have to process. Now, going forward, and basically going into the next phase, we talk about storyboarding, which is a technique where visual sequences are used to plan an outline for a story, process, or concept. It helps organize and communicate the flow of a project visually. And here we've got a couple of examples here. This is a simple example. It's just like a sort of scenery. And it has like some messages underneath to tell a bit about a story. And it says like, Carl, don't do this. This is not who you are. So it has some emotional impact. I have seen tolerance crumble, the very existence of goodwill. That ends now, right? And then boom, the blast happens. But these scenes here are very straightforward and simple. And the way we can communicate to viewers and to people in general is by creating these type of things to help them understand what we're trying to convey. And of course, there are many ways you can think about ideas and ideation. If you do a simple Google search on the methods and methodology, in essence, you'll find a lot of methods to create and generate ideas. It can expand your way of thinking and processing issues at scale, even if it's not art related. It helps with your art problem solving ability, and in general problem solving ability across the board. Is not related only to art, but it makes you think differently over time. You'll see here you got 635 brainwriting, mind mapping, storyboarding. You have challenge assumption. You got worst possible ideas, and the list continues. I do suggest you actually check this whole list and actually check each part and component to understand more about ideation. In this part, we're gonna briefly go over sketching, because I strongly believe sketching is a very important component of any artist out there. It's something that you need to understand and actually follow up with to help you to process things a lot better. Sketching is a quick and simple way of drawing to capture or explore ideas. It is rough and often unfinished drawing used for brainstorming, planning, or expressing creativity. Now, you'll see that these sketches actually seem pretty clean and they seem pretty interesting already, but you see they're still pretty loose. The importance of sketching, we've got different methodologies here going on, but you can sketch with line, you can sketch with shapes, you can sketch in many ways. For you as an artist, depending on what you're comfortable to sketch with, you'll actually process things maybe different than others. But remember, sketching is part of the process and is very important. Execution relates to how you execute, how you actually put things together on paper or canvas. You either use Photoshop or either work in real life. We'll go through the idea of simplicity bias, which shortly stands to simplify everything you can in the process itself. And of course, mark making, which relates to how you will move on the canvas itself through the brush strokes and everything that you actually try to work with. You got things such as brush economy, brush height, brush width, textures attached to the brush, and so on and so forth. But that highly depends on how you actually prefer to work. Let's talk about the simplicity bias. When you sketch or use a shape with lasso, it is important to pay deliberate attention to simplification of line, shape, or both. It is an active thinking process, and we'll showcase it below. So what happens here below? Here in the first part, we have the reference, which we clearly see it's a painting done traditionally. We put it in value here to see what's going on. And of course, the reference part is when you have a reference, you need to pay attention to what is the context and how you can simplify and what you can simplify exactly. In our case, we have the idea of value. We reduce value and clamp wherever is necessary. So that's exactly what you'll see in the second image here. What we did was we took the values that we got and we clamped them massively to see okay, how we can create readability. And you see that the value here of the vase is actually lighter than it's here, but we did that to actually create readability. The purpose of clamping values is to increase readability. A good first step is to start by reducing everything to a couple of values when you work with shape, and also be deliberate on how you define those shapes. As you see, it should be simplified. In the next part, this would be a target of simplification. We simplify everything as much as we can, and you see here we already start to clamp value even more and actually have enhanced readability. And that is something you have to remember because it's highly important. When it comes to simplicity bias, there's a different application of this. So now here we have a photorealistic image here, which is a photo. I got it from Pinterest. You see here that I took the photo and I simplified it like this. So I reduced everything to the minimum available values that I could. And then I turned it into this part here where I add another value range, and of course I add the beard and so on and so forth. So we add a couple of things here. And then I take this and I just paint while I squint my eyes. So the way I process this value with shape, I squint my eyes and I check where are the high reads. And then I built this. You need to master simplification accuracy of shapes. That's number one. You need to simplify value range as much as possible to improve readability. And you have to ignore details and keep your actions deliberate. Here we have a more ample example. What happens here is basically the simplicity bias. You'll basically see how things are simplified and how you simplify shapes in essence. If you see this circle shape, the way you paint it is kind of like this. So this is me deliberately trying to paint the circle. If I try to simplify more, I do this is a simplification with the use of geometrization of shapes, and then from this I turn it into a pentagon. It becomes a circle from far away, and I can show really quick here what happens. I'm gonna just zoom out like that. You see it becomes more of a circle there. Now I'm gonna go back here like that so we can get back to the normal ratio. There we go. And that's pretty much what happens. It is important to understand that this type of process is basically simplify through geometrization of shapes. It occurs when you take a path that simplifies any shape to the most recognizable shape with the use of geometry. Here we see an example where we simplify until we lose the previous shape almost completely. It is important to reduce things to a maximum if we want to simplify. And you have another example here. It goes from this to this to this to that, right? It almost becomes triangular. It becomes if you squint your eyes, it's pretty far away from the first shape, but again is actually the most simplified version of the first version. Now here we see another example where we have this more complex shape, but you see this creates an addition here which simplifies this part and then goes here and then goes there. We see an example where the interior shape that we had previously gets lost through a process of filling. Sometimes in doing artwork we need our brain to wire itself to create these contexts, especially on larger scale artworks. Another thing we try to think or keep in mind is what happens with this scenario here, which I have just a normal photo of a tree here. I try to simplify it. So I simplified it in a manner where I still add some details here and there. The last one I simplified to an extent that this becomes very geometrical, and it's simplified completely. You see that simplification of edges that go on here. So this is detail, less detail, very few detail to a maximum simplification, which looks almost like a logo. This is pretty important for you guys to understand that this type of process actually helps you to understand how things are working. Since we explained the simplicity bias here, let's move forward. There are different ways to simplify. You can do it by shape, and it highly depends on how you process the shape itself. So this depends on the artist. It usually depends on how your brain is wired and how you actually process those issues. You can do it through hard shapes or round shapes even. So you can use your geometrization of shape part, by using geometry simply, or you can even round corners where able. You can simplify, you can use addition or subtraction in the process, but that's something you can do. You can use the principle of unity to unify components even if they might be different in size, scale, shape, or value range. Unifying things you find out will lead you through simplicity. Another principle you can use is addition and subtraction. As I explained earlier, you can add components to create complexity or subtract components to create simplicity. There's also an interesting method of addition of simplicity which relies on unity. By unity, you will get things closer together. A final thought on simplification would be that there's always a deliberate choice to move towards what you want to do with the methods. There is no perfect way of simplifying, but over time you learn how to work with different methods. You have to choose if you move towards X color rather than Y color. Just to give an example, you have to choose to collapse certain areas to keep other areas interesting. You have to choose if you use more geometric shapes versus more organic and flowy shapes. At the end of the choice belongs to you and how you deal with it. Meaning it is you who are the master of the artwork and you have to choose your way through it. On the last page here, since we're actually getting close to final, we have a very, very clear, simple example. Now, we have this area here, which is clearly explained. We do have like all these regions separated. You see I separated by outlining with color, and you see what happens in the next part here. So we can see how things are simplified. We outline the areas and we try to find the value in between for each area based on the dominant. Okay, so whenever you choose value in a picture, I usually have a tendency to see like if there's a 60% with 40%, I'll choose the 60% dominant in that value range simply because that dominates more of the picture and it keeps the value a lot clearer. I don't choose the 40%, although you can if you want to test it out, because it is actually the value that is actually lower in dominance. So I choose the higher one in dominance so I can simplify things to a manner that you'll see here in the next picture. Value 1, let's say it's 80%, and value 2 is 20%. The value range should go towards 80% more, and reduction through value range should be more towards that. So we basically use a reductionist method to value range to actually help us to make readability happen. Value 1 is a 50% and value 2 is 50%. The value range should be equal mix of the both. So you basically try to find the mix of the both. Just to give an example here, you see that this is for the first case and this is for the second case. I'll choose the mid-range between these two because that is the best approach. And you see here what happens with this scenario here, and then you see these two scenarios quite small, and you see from far away, you actually get readability, and exactly what you look for is the sweet spot for ideation and a good answer to study and simplify everything. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video in essence. Hope you actually had fun actually understanding what is the importance of ideation sketching, and I'll see you in the comments below, where you can actually check and download the ideation sketching PDF. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Check our video description for more resources, including courses, tips, feedback, and a lively community on Discord. I'll see you there.